Year 10, welcome to today's online learning. As always, before we begin, check your learning area. Are you in a distraction-free area? TV turned off, phones put away. Have you got your pen, paper at the ready, or alternatively, is your Word document uploaded and ready to go? Okay, cool, let's get started. So, we are on Tuesday the 2nd of March. Your title is My Last Duchess, and you have 5 retrieval task questions to complete. Please pause the video, give yourselves no longer than 5 minutes to write down today's date and title underlined with a ruler and to answer those 5 questions. Okay, let's go through. So what is sibilance? Sibilance is the repetition of the S sound, okay, the S sound. Who wrote the prelude? So this was written by William Wordsworth. Romanticism was a breakaway from what era? So this is called the Enlightenment era, okay? So the Enlightenment era came first, then we had Romanticism. When or where does the poem Bayonet Charge start? So it starts in the middle of the battlefield. So he is charging as the poem starts, right onto the battlefield. So he's come up over the trench and the poem starts. And finally, the Charge of the Light Brigade was written in what kind of rhythm? Dactylic rhythm. Okay, give yourselves a mark out of 5. Okay then, so today we're going to be looking at a poem called My Last Duchess, which was written by Robert Browning, who's this person here. So Browning was influenced by his father's art and literature, enjoying historical information. So he loved history and he loved to learn about history. So as such, the poem is actually based on a real historical figure. So the Duke in the poem is based on Duke Alfonso II, who ruled Ferrara in northern Italy between 1559 and 1597. The Duchess, his first wife, Lucrezia de Medici, probably pronouncing that horrifically wrong, died just 2 years after marrying the Duke. She was only 17. And she died under suspicious circumstances, so they think she may have been poisoned. So Barrett's overprotective father may have also influenced some of the themes, as well as the Victorian attitude of rules and control to avoid sin. Okay, so that's just a little bit of context there. So just a bit more contextual information before we look at the poem. So a duke is a noble person, so historically of a highest rank below the king or queen, and a duchess is a wife to the duke. At this time, women were expected to be subordinate to men, so women were underneath men in ranking. They had to obey what men would say, they had to listen to men and do what men asked. Women were often viewed as possessions or objects, which meant that they actually belonged to their husbands. They were a property of their husband. And women were expected to behave in what was known as a womanly manner. So there would have been certain things that women were expected to do or not to do. Men with money, specifically like the Duke, would often marry attractive women to show their power. And the Duchess would have been considered lucky because the Duke's title meant she had power and wealth, okay? So it was slightly, the times that this is based off of were obviously quite different to the times that we live in now, alright? Obviously if you want to pause and make down some notes, that's fine. So, reading the poem. So the poem is loosely based on the historical events revolving around Alfonso, who lived in the 16th century, and the Duke is the speaker of the poem. So it's the Duke who's talking, he's the narrator, and he tells us he is entertaining someone who has come to negotiate the Duke's marriage. So he's recently been widowed, and someone has come to negotiate his next marriage to the daughter of another powerful family. This is the poem here. I'm going to read it out loud to you, and it is 2 slides worth. It is a longer poem. Obviously, if you prefer to read it yourself, just skip over me. That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder, now. Frau Pandolf's hand worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will it please you sit and look at her? I said. I said Frau Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance, but to myself they turn, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I, and seemed as they would ask me if they durst, how such a glance came there. So, not the first are you to turn and ask thus. Sir, 'twas not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess's cheek. Perhaps Frau Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half-flesh that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling upon that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one, my favour at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bow of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech, or blush at least. She thanked men, good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900-years-old name with anybody's gift. Who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling? Even had you skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an one, and say, just this or that, and you disgust me, here you miss, or there exceed the mark. And if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to yours, forsooth, and made excuse. Even then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled no doubt whenever I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile? This grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. There she stands as if alive. Will it please you rise? We'll meet the company below then. I repeat, the Count your master's known munificence is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed, a starting is my object. Nay, we'll go together down, sir. Notice Neptune, though, taming a sea-horse, thought a rarity, which Klaus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. Okay, so that is the poem My Last Duchess. So the Duke of Ferrara is speaking to a messenger in this poem. So the messenger has come on behalf of a count who is deciding whether his daughter should marry the Duke. Whilst there, the Duke takes the messenger to see his art, including a portrait of his late wife. So the Duke has taken the messenger from the Count in, and he's asked him to sit and look at this painting of his dead wife. The Duke describes his wife throughout the whole poem and implies that she was unfaithful to him. He also implies that he had her killed, so there is a tone of possessiveness and jealousy at the end of the poem. So he sits this messenger in front of the painting and goes, look at my beautiful wife. She was really, really beautiful, but actually she was quite unfaithful. She was quite flirtatious with other men. I believe that she wasn't faithful to me, and therefore you might assume that I had her killed, is basically what he said. Okay. So let's just go through some comprehension questions, okay? So the Duke is talking to a representative from another court, so he's talking to the messenger of the Count, and they have to negotiate a dowry. A dowry is money brought by a bride to her husband at marriage. And I want you to look at the second line of the poem. What does this reveal to us? Please write your answers down. What does the Duke think of the appearance of the image, and what words tell us that? Write your answers down. What does the Duke ask the listener to do? And finally, what does if they durst tell us about the Duke's character? Okay, so that's 4 questions there. Pause the video, obviously go back to the poem to have a little look, and make sure you write your answers down either on your piece of paper or on your Word document, however you're doing it. Okay, so we are going to start analysing language now. And we're going to look at the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 lines to begin with. If you prefer the handwritten annotations, obviously stop the video now and move on to the annotated video, okay? So let's go then. That's my last Duchess painted on the wall. So the pronoun my is possessive, so it's suggesting that the Duke is in control and has power. And last Duchess is quite important because it implies he's had more than one wife, and it kind of hints at his attitude towards marriage, suggesting that wives, people, or women are disposable. So it could hint at her murder. Also, my last wife, the most recent one that I've had. So we kind of get this feeling that potentially the Duke isn't all that. What would be the word? He's not as worried about marriage, because if he loses one wife, he could probably, because of his title, quite easily find another one. So that's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. This is quite ironic. He knows that she isn't alive, and it's probably him that's had her killed. So note the full stop there. So it's almost looking as if she were alive. Full stop. She's done. She's dealt with. I call that piece of wonder now, Fray Pandolf's hand worked busily a day. So this person is a famous fictional painter. So it's almost as if the Duke is showing off. So he praises the painting, saying how it looks almost alive, and the painter must have worked hard to make it so realistic. So did the painter have to do it this way to please the Duke? Does it make the Duke seem intimidating and imposing? Also, the Duke only actually refers to his hands, who worked so hard, which is quite dehumanising about the painter. It doesn't actually celebrate his talent or his vision, just more about what his hands can paint. Worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will it please you sit and look at her? I said. So this appears like a question, but actually it's kind of a command. So it's said like a question, there is a question mark there, but the messenger knows that he has to comply. So this emphasises his power and authority. I said, Frau Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. So he's still describing the painting here, and he explains that he feels guests always want to ask how the painter put such depth and passion into the painting. So if we think that it's the wife, the Duchess, that's being painted with depth and passion, if the Duchess is filled with passion, is she innocent? Is this our first hint that maybe she's guilty of something? Okay. Obviously, if you need to pause the video, that's fine. I'm actually going to stop this video here just because I've only got about 1.5 minutes before my 15-minute timer runs out. So go on to the next video and we'll carry on with the language analysis, okay?